The closer he got to the trailer and the more he thought about things, the hotter his face felt. A muscle along the back edge of his jaw began to tick. He wanted to punch the ceiling of his car, but the last time he had done that, his hand ended up swollen and sore for 2 weeks. He settled for a long, furious drag off his cigarette, burning it nearly to the filter. Reaching to roll down the window to toss it out, he was startled by a thump-thump and simultaneous lurch of his car. The cigarette dropped from his mouth as he grabbed the wheel. He thrust his pelvis against his seatbelt, hoping to flip the still-burning butt off his lap, but it fell into the gap between his legs as he hammered his brakes, his car shimmying as though the tires were rolling through ice troughs. But it hadn't snowed in months, and there was nothing on the road but the wet of 5 days of continuous rain. He struggled to maneuver the car onto the gravel shoulder as it decelerated and finally brought it to a stop. Scorching his thumb as he retrieved the smoldering butt, he tossed it out the small opening of his window, then sat for a long moment trying to catch his breath. Holy fucking shit. He scanned the gauges of his car, searching for any clue as to what happened. There were no warning lights illuminated, nothing out of the ordinary. Taking a deep breath, he unbuckled his seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped out into the driving rain. His first thought was to check the front of his car to see if he had hit something, maybe a raccoon or a small deer, but before he even closed his door, he saw that the front left tire was completely flat. "Oh, fuck," he groaned. Then it occurred to him that he hadn't replaced his spare from when he got a flat the previous year. Fucking shit. Maybe I can just drive it with the flat the last couple of miles to Gina's. I'm already so fucking late. That bitch is going to have a fucking fit. He decided to check on the spare anyway. Maybe it would at least hold air for a few minutes. As he closed the driver's side door and turned to walk to the back of the car, he saw that the left rear tire was also completely flat. Fuck, you've got to fucking be kidding me. Tyler exhaled with great exaggeration, put his hands on his hips, and looked up to face the cold rain falling from the black sky above. 2 flat tires. Unfucking believable. He didn't have extra money laying around for this kind of shit. Shaking his head, he got down on hands and knees to inspect the flats, looking for anything that could have punctured them. Bending down until his cheek nearly touched the wet road, he could see the dim silhouettes of both tires on the other side of the car. They were flat too. Startled, he hopped to his feet. "What the f—" he asked out loud, his eyes wide. He took a few steps back from his car and looked around. What the hell could have flattened all 4 of his tires? With no obvious answer, he began a slow circuit of his car, eyeballing each tire in turn and scanning the area for clues. There were no marks on the front bumper and nothing on the body aside from old dents. The engine, still running, seemed fine. Returning to the rear of the car, he strained to see if there was anything back down the road from the direction he had come, maybe rocks or some other debris on the roadway. But it was just too dark to tell, and he didn't think it would be worth the trouble, if it were even possible, to get the car turned around so the headlights would shine in that direction. Unnerved, he wasn't about to investigate on foot. Fuck that. At a loss for what to do, he turned the engine off, then found himself even more unsettled by the sudden relative quiet. With his t-shirt and jeans already soaking wet, he got down on his hands and knees to get a better look at the right rear tire. Positioning himself with his head just off the ground, he waited for his eyes to adjust to the darkness. Then he heard something. A brief rustle of underbrush directly behind him. It was hardly audible over the hiss of the rain falling on the surrounding woods, but it sounded close enough to make him turn his head and stare. He peered toward the misty, dark forest, staring for the better part of a minute. A tingle of fear pricked at his insides. All he could make out were tree trunks, branches, and underbrush, all wet with rain. At last, convinced it was nothing, he turned back to the tire, moving his fingertips along the wet and dirty treads, probing for damage. Finding nothing out of the ordinary on the front quarter, he began to run his hand over the top of the tire. As he did so, he heard the rustle again, then the snap of a twig, this time louder and closer. Much closer.